So we're doing a show from a hotel room in Mobile, Alabama. Welcome, everybody, to me talking on AirPods, desperately in need of a haircut. What's the name of the show? It's Thinking Out Loud, everybody. My name is Andrew Siciliano. I'm here at the 76th Reese's Senior Bowl because why not? I wanted to see some snow, so I came to New Orleans, or no, Mobile, near New Orleans. Actually, all the snow is melted. Thankfully, here in lower Alabama, they had 8 inches a week ago. There's no Mardi Gras overlapping with the Senior Bowl this year, which is utterly fantastic. That the streets are not nearly as congested, but also kind of sad because Mardi Gras and the Senior Bowl make an amazing combination. Why are you at the Senior Bowl, you ask? Well, I'm down here with the Browns. They have 12, at least now, maybe 13 picks, depending on some of the other picks that may slide their way, compensatory and supplementary and all those other picks. Supplementary is not even a real word, but they have 2, they have 33, and their whole brain trust is here, as is the entire NFL. So I am here. Your favorite head coach is likely here. GM certainly here. And last year, 43% of the draft, 110 players were selected that were here in Mobile at the Reese's Senior Bowl, including 10 first-round picks. So, listen, it's Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield and Justin Herbert and Daniel Jones and Carson Wentz and you name it. All those quarterbacks were here at the Reese's Senior Bowl. How about Bo Nix and Michael Penix last year? Here at the Reese's Senior Bowl. How about Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua? 5th and 3rd round picks, respectively, here at the Senior Bowl. So that is why the entire NFL is here, wearing dry fit and drinking cheap Bud Lights late into the night in lower Alabama. And Sam Betesh, there was also, I bet you didn't know, maybe you did, 2 conference championship games this past Sunday, including congratulations to your Philadelphia Eagles. Didn't wreck the city. I don't think the fans did not wreck the city. If they did, so be it. I kid. But congratulations to the Eagles heading to New Orleans. Are you going to go?
So it's really been a debate here in the house, as you can imagine. I believe that I am not going. I have family that is in New Orleans, not the same family I had from years ago. The cousins and uncles that were there are now in Austin, Texas instead. But my mom is from New Orleans. My parents met at LSU. And so, yes, it felt like maybe I'll do it. Should I go to the Big Easy? But superstition or not, I've just decided at this point, we're gonna watch responsibly at home as a father. As a husband, we're going to be that guy, although there will be a house full of people. Or I ask you this, should I rent out a movie theater and watch with people all around me? It's always one of those difficult things where based on the outcome, it's fun if you're there to celebrate with everyone. It's not. I mean, when you root for a team that's in the Super Bowl, yes, it can go one of 2 ways. And when it goes the wrong way, that hurts. And so
so I've never had that opportunity as a fan of, well, I'll take it back. With the Rams, yes, I was there.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. Both times. Good and bad. With the Browns, I've never had the opportunity. I would no way in bleeping HE double hockey sticks rent out a movie theater. What a waste of money. Well, you have a nice televisions in your home. Yeah, why would you do that? I'm all for keeping it to a small circle of family. I don't need to watch it. I'm either at the game or watching with a small group. I don't need to watch it with like 60 people. It's either small or large, and large being the stadium.
Yeah, I understand it. And I had an opportunity. I went, as far as Eagles Super Bowls, I was there in Jacksonville, as you all know, with you at the Super Bowl, which they lost the 2004 season.
Sam snuck in, for those who don't know.
It was really interesting. We actually did. My cousin, Danielle, we surged in. I don't know, a group of Patriots fans wanted her to get in, even though she didn't have a ticket. And somehow, I don't know how they got her in, but that did happen. But the Minneapolis Super Bowl, I was not there. And of course, that one went well.
I'm putting a light on as you keep talking.
Let's do it. I like that. That's fine. And then the Glendale Super Bowl against the Chiefs 2 years ago, I was there in Glendale for a couple days ahead of the game, did not go to the game. That obviously turned out predictably with Mahomes winning a close game. My assumption here is this will be very much the same. Mahomes, Andy Reid finding a way to win that game. And Yeah, I'd say the longest answer possible. I'm gonna watch on TV. And the NFL is amazing on TV, and I enjoy it that way, and I expect that, and I'm glad you're there in Mobile to do the homework that all of us need to ahead of the draft.
Yeah, it's you get to meet all these guys before they become the guys in the NFL, and it's not just the first round picks. People go, oh, well, look at the quarterbacks. There aren't great quarterbacks here. That's fine. Look at the rest of the league that's here, and all these other players that are not found. They're good players. They're invited here for a reason because they have great college careers. Some at small schools, some at big schools. Either way, they're here, and you get to compete best against best. And yeah, it's where the entire league stands together on the field and watches these guys up close. Mike Tomlin may jump in a drill and coach. Not kidding. He does that every year. Other guys like to sit up in the stands all by themselves and take notes. When I say guys, I mean coaches, GMs, scouting staffs. Everybody is here, period. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the games. We'll start backwards, AFC to NFC. So, a full disclosure: I was here in Mobile watching with a bunch of my colleagues from the Browns. We went from dinner to another place to watch the game. I missed the fourth down spot. I thought he had it. Nothing else I could say. People want to scream and yell about microchips in footballs. There is a chip in the ball, guys. That's how they do the GPS. That's how they There's a chip in the ball. Okay. It's more than just a chip in the ball that needs to be in place to get a system for spotting first downs. You need laser beams all over the field. I'm exaggerating, but it's more than just put a chip in the ball and fix it like tennis. It's not like that. It truly is not like that. There should be better technology. There isn't. I still thought he had the first down. That's that. Again, I was between two different buildings, so I can't tell you what was said on the air, what Steratore said, or how it played out in real time. I was going from a restaurant to a hotel. But yeah, I thought Josh Allen had the first down. It's not why they lost. It certainly would have helped if they got it, however, but it is not why they lost. In the end, Allen still made a superhero throw. Dalton Kincaid, tough catch. He dropped it. It's a tough catch. I mean, very tough catch. Josh threw a YOLO ball, and Kincaid almost came down with it. I do feel for Josh. I texted somebody late that evening while watching the post-game presser when I got back to the hotel and actually got to see and hear what other people were saying and thinking, and more importantly, what the podium was in the post-game, because I didn't see any of that. I felt for Josh, the look on his face, the finality of these playoffs for any team, all 32. Whenever your season ends, but the finality of losing the postseason like this when you are so close, it's a gut punch as a fan, and it's much different than if you're a player. I remember each and every one of the Browns' losses in the AFC Championship game 3 times in 4 years, 86, 87, 89, like they were yesterday. Remember each and every part of those games. Oh, Ernest Spider fumbled. Guys, that would have tied the game. It wouldn't have won the game. All right. John Elway, that sent it to overtime, right? So I remember every last detail about those games, and I felt for Josh because Patrick Mahomes is in the way. I thought this was the year. I picked the Commanders and the Bills. Nailed it. Utterly nailed it. Fantastically nailed it. I thought this was it. This was not Buffalo's best team, but it had to happen eventually, and maybe it will one of these days, but it hasn't happened yet. And honestly, the Rust Belt I hate the phrase Rust Belt speaks. I don't like the term nor the connotation, but Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo, one of them's got to get one. Lions came close last year, not as close this year. Buffalo is seemingly close every year. Cleveland in 2020 basically had the Chiefs beaten at Arrowhead in the divisional round, and they couldn't finish the deal when Mahomes was out of the game. And it was Chad Henne who got the key fourth down conversion on a Tyreek Hill little end around. One of those teams has got to break through for the sake of humanity and for the sake, I think, of just a collective fandom there between those 3 towns, the Lake Erie corridor, if you will, that deserve one of these. I know the Bills made their 4 with Jim Kelly and lost them all. I get it. The Browns in that era as well, 3 times the bridesmaid in the AFC Championship game. At least one of those, I know they would have won if they had made it. Maybe not in 89, they wouldn't have made it. In 86, I think they would have won. I feel for you Bills fans, and I feel for Josh, who is going to win one of these days because he's too good to not win. When? I don't know. I hope it's sometime soon because I want it for him. I want it for that town, and they deserve it. They truly, truly deserve it.
It felt, I'm not going to say it felt like this year necessarily, but the way that the Bills beat the Ravens, it felt like this could happen. Forget about the regular season win, which we know that's happened a few times. Regular season win from Josh Allen did not equate to postseason win against Patrick Mahomes. Two things, though. The Spagnuolo blitz on the 4th and 5 was an incredible call, and
Yeah, he's a great coach.
Ultimately won the game. I know there are a lot of people talking about the officiating, and I just want to say the Chiefs are the best coached team. They execute brilliantly. You have to play perfectly to beat them. I do want to say that every quarterback coach and every offensive coordinator in the league should run the tape of what Josh Allen did on 4th and 5 when he was completely out of that play. I mean, he's taken out of that play immediately by the blitz. To throw the ball into the middle of the field to give your team a chance in that situation was an epic athletic play.
Absolutely.
Even to make it close, yes, the Kincaid thing makes it heartbreaking that he was even that close to getting it. But again, taking a sack there or throwing the ball out of bounds, which many quarterbacks do in that situation, because obviously you panic. I mean, the defense is in your face. You don't know what to do.
You can't throw it out of bounds. It's 4th down.
Because it's 4th down, just throw it up like a punt and see what happens. And ultimately, that was a special play there. But you mentioned my only thought about this whole thing, now 2 days removed from the game. Josh Allen, is it one of those, is this going to be Karl Malone, Patrick Ewing, you played in the era of Michael Jordan, and sorry, but you will just be sort of incredible in the town that you came from and never sort of on that pedestal in that way? He may still very well have, Josh Allen, a Hall of Fame career and never get past Mahomes. That could happen. And I guess I'm asking you in a way, but more hypothetical. Don't we think eventually Josh Allen will break through? I mean, Peyton Manning, right? Peyton Manning couldn't beat Belichick and Brady, couldn't beat, Brady, it's obviously not a head-to-head. It's not even fair. And the Belichick defense was stifling Peyton Manning early on in those matchups. But that AFC championship in Indy changed everything theoretically. I mean, that was Peyton breaking through. Eventually he beats the Bears in that Super Bowl and then gets another one with the Broncos and is this, it changed everything to break through. And we think Josh Allen will do that, right?
No, I think he will. And look, maybe he beats them. I assume he will one of these days. Or listen, not wishing injury upon anything. Maybe the Chiefs have a Matt Castle situation one day, right? And then maybe that happens. Or maybe Pat's got to miss 6 weeks in the middle of the season for whatever reason, and they don't have home field, right? Maybe it's one of those. But guess what? They didn't have home field last year, and they went on the road, and they won in Baltimore when everyone thought the Ravens were finally going to do it, and somebody would finally knock them off. He's a sorcerer. He practices the dark arts. And I'll say it 1,000 times, and Daniel Jeremiah said it best last week. They have gone from a team with a dynamic offense and an opportunistic defense to a team with a dynamic defense and an opportunistic offense. James Cook, the play he made on 4th down, levitate, it's one of the best plays you'll ever see made by a running back.
I think it's the best play of the postseason to this point, certainly for this season.
Unbelievable.
Sure. Like you said, it could be ever, but to do all of those things with your body on a play that was have to have it or nothing. I mean, that's 4th and goal, and you've got to get in. That's wow.
And if Kincaid caught that ball, this is a different conversation.
Completely.
It's a different conversation. They're within field goal range. Now, granted, last year Tyler Bass missed the kick, right? So who's to say he's going to make the kick this time? I know America has Chiefs fatigue. They're good. They're good for a reason. But, get away, please. Stop it with the officials and the Taylor switch. Just move on. He's as Josh Allen said, to be the best, you got to beat the best, and we have not. Period. They have not. And to hear him say it, because he knows it, he knows it deep, deep, deep down inside.
Have you heard the awful stat about Mahomes being 7 for 7 in situations where his team is trailing in a situation where a field goal or a touchdown will tie or win the game with a minute or less in a game? He's 7 for 7 in those situations.
Of course.
And the other two quarterbacks that are even in the conversation from a percentage standpoint of being in that situation and doing it are Brady and Breeze, who are each at about 50% in that spot. Yeah. And Mahomes is 7 of 7.
There was no doubt that Samaje Perine was going to get the first down. And of course, he had to touch the ball the entire game. So there, Samaje Perine, kids for the win. So good for them. And as for the Eagles, I really thought Jane Daniels would make it more interesting. The Commanders simply played like a team that won 4 games the year before. They did. I mean, they made some plays, not enough. You had to play a perfect game. Had to play a perfect game. And listen, I've said this 1,000 times and had some conversations in the last 48 hours here as well, backing it up. Not backing up, just getting other people's conversations, other people's opinions. The Philadelphia team that I saw in person in October, that others saw in October or even in September, that was not a Super Bowl team. They weren't that good. What they have done, what they have turned around, and what Saquon has done is phenomenal. If the MVP voting were done now, Saquon would win. It's not. It was done at the end of the season, and Saquon, Lamar, and Josh Allen all deserve to win. Whomever wins. God bless you. The Eagles are going back to the Super Bowl in large part, though, because of their defense. Even though they ran the ball exceedingly well, that defense forced turnovers every game. You look up, Zach Bond's punching the ball out. They're getting turnovers on special teams, even though the one against the Packers was, I still don't know that they ever recovered the football, but congratulations, you have a football. So good for you. This is an interesting matchup. The ticket prices are down. I'm not one of these people that says America doesn't care because ticket prices are, I mean, look, we have a long way between now and then. I'm getting all these people asking me, pick the game. Like, no. You pick the game on Friday before the game. Like, that is a Radio Row amateur bit. If you're picking the game on Monday, hey, guest is here on Monday. What do you think? Who's going to win the game? No, stop it. Like, save that for Friday. Like, you got to gather all the information, and I'm going to hold back on that as well. I never thought this Eagles team was good enough to get there in October. But when I saw them, Sam, and I've repeatedly said this, and you were there as well, that game in November on a Sunday night in LA, I was like, okay, I get it. They are a bully, and Jalen Carter and the Eagles bullied the Commanders. Some of what Jalen did was actually legal, but they bullied the Commanders, and hey, they could puff their chest out right now. Good for them, because all the moves that they made, many of them worked. Some of them did not, but we are officially in the 2-week spin zone of the Eagles have never made a bad move in the draft or off the field. So get ready for that car wash, rinse, wash, and repeat. They've never made a bad move, ever.
Well, we know you and I beyond that they certainly have made many terrible moves, and we'll just throw out maybe Nnamdi Asomugha as one. I mean, through the years, there've been some special ones that did not work out very well, and in fact, DeMarco Murray, another one that I'll point to at the running back position, since this one turned out so well. I'll only say this: it was surprising. If you ask, if 100 years from now, if you say which team scored the most points in a championship game of all time, that it was this year's Eagles teams.
55.
I'd be surprised that they were the 55 on this. And of course, in 100 years, there will be many more than that. But that was surprising. The 7 rushing touchdowns. I guess my favorite stat I heard from that is that the Cowboys rushed for 6 touchdowns all season, and the Eagles ran for 7 on Sunday against the Commanders. That was impressive. You may have nailed it, though. Defensively, that was the tone of the game. The game spun on the recovered kick before halftime. I would say ultimately that was a ball game. That was a 2-point ball game at that point. And for Shipley and Gainwell to make that play to get the ball out and to recover it, that the defense really has been special. And Fangio, what he's done is as impressive as what Saquon has done. And I'd say just one other thing. It's interesting that of course the Commanders and the Rams for that told themselves all week heading into the game, we're not going to let Saquon beat us. And of course the Commanders are thinking that's not going to happen. For the first play from scrimmage for the Eagles, after an 18-play drive from the Commanders, which was, by the way, the greatest drive against the Eagles this season from a number of plays standpoint, for Saquon to rip that touchdown there he's on another level.
Bobby Wagner took out his own man.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That helped for sure.
Yeah. But the C gap was open because 2 Commanders ran into each other.
Yes. And the Eagles on an offensive line that for the day was a little banged up. And I'm only saying Saquon for not getting the record. Clearly saving for this situation, and it happened. And like you, I don't want to pick the game, and I would only say feels like Chiefs are going to win the game.
It wouldn't surprise me. About Saquon, I was having a conversation with the legendary Chris Johnson today, CJ2K, and I said to him, like, "Were you rooting for Saquon?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I was rooting for Saquon." I'm like, "Do you care? how many games he did? No, I don't. But like, I wish he did it in 14. Like he was laughing about that. Like 14 would have been cool. I said 12 would have been great. I said, but like you're with me. Like there's no reason to play in week 18. He's like, no. I mean, record would have been great, but absolutely, do I get it? Like if he played, he played. But no, it totally makes sense.
And you know what? Not enough people have
him.
said it. There is the Eagles did rush for the most yards by a team in the history of the game. There is, I mean, it doesn't get mentioned. I understand it's not an individual accomplishment, but the Eagles did rush for more yards than any team ever has in one season. Yes, caveat 17 games, but still impressive, still something. And as a team, something they can hang their hat on, sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that's that. There's the Brian Schottenheimer thing. I feel for Brian Schottenheimer a little bit. I'm happy for him. There are plenty of people here in Mobile that are happy for Brian Schottenheimer, truly, and in that Cowboys building as well. I do think that this Schottenheimer hire speaks a little bit to, I don't know, not that they didn't want Kellen Moore, but I think Dak felt comfortable with Brian Schottenheimer, and I think that carried a lot of weight in this thing. I'll say it was one of the more awkward press conferences I've seen in a long time. And that is a pretty high bar. After introducing everybody, the first question I believe was from Calvin Watkins, although correct me if I'm wrong. And it was simply, hey, Jerry, why Brian Schottenheimer, in a totally non-combative way. But hey, owner, please explain why coach was hired, right? And Jerry basically went off for 12 minutes defending himself, and that basically, I've made a lot of really good hires. I like taking risks. Cut me some slack. I know what the bleep I'm doing. All the while sitting next to Brian Schottenheimer, motioning to him, saying, this is the biggest risk I've ever taken. Like, you thought Shad and Trent Baalke was awkward. This was just like, oh boy. Like, he can hear you, right? All the while, he's saying wonderful things about Schottenheimer, his family, and his legacy. And I thought it was great when Brian obviously mentioned his father and what his father would say to him right now. Like, that got me right here. That was awesome. Awesome. And so I wish him well. It's one of those ones you're kind of scratching your head, though. Like, man, I hope this doesn't turn south quickly, because then what? And now as we sit here, we still don't have a Saints head coach, amazingly. My gut tells me Kellen Moore, but I don't know that for certain.
Yeah, this was interesting. It felt defensive, the press conference, I would say.
I only watched the first answer, and then I had to go do something. But those first 12 minutes, I was like, oh boy.
It did. It felt defensive. And Jerry, I'll say this much. It felt maybe more bold of a choice. As much as he was in-house, Schottenheimer felt like a bold choice for the Cowboys. The Cowboys have gone with what I would consider obvious moves in the past, or big names and Parcells. And this felt in-house, but special, a guy that not everyone was after. 2 points I'll make. Kellen Moore, there are some out there. I read an article that the Eagles put up 55 points. Kellen Moore was like proving a point to the Cowboys. How dare you not pick me? And he was showing, yes, here's what my offense can do. That's adorable. I can't imagine the Commanders were willing to play a part in that. But Schottenheimer, I'm surprised it wasn't Kellen. The Saints now are apparently flying in to see Kellen Moore. So they're more than a Zoom interview. They're making sure, I think, that he's going to be their guy, to your point. And the Schottenheimer thing with what Jerry Jones did, it was as if he was trying to get ahead of everyone who was going to say, how could it be Schottenheimer? This doesn't feel like a Cowboys level hire. This isn't the hot name that everyone's after. Deion Sanders feels like a Cowboys type of move. And once you have that rumor of Deion, or not just a rumor, once you have a conversation with Deion, I think Schottenheimer is then something that you have to explain. Not that Deion was necessarily there and didn't take the deal, but you do have to explain why Schottenheimer made so much sense, especially since if he was right there and you knew it the whole time, why all of this. And, they spoke to Leslie Frazier, obviously Kellen Moore, as we said, the Deion thing. I mean, there were other conversations that were had, but this is an interesting one. And unfortunately, Schottenheimer in Seattle, Andrew, you were a little closer to that. I think that Schottenheimer chapter was a pretty good one. Most people would agree that the Schottenheimer in Seattle. I'd say the Jets thing is, there was a lot of up and down there with Schottenheimer for the Jets. I don't think people were really necessarily relishing those offenses per se, but the Seattle thing went well. I'm surprised at Schottenheimer, and it does make me think the line of the press conference that we should be taking away more so from Jerry was Brian understands Marty, his dad, went to 3 AFC championships and never won one. And he is saying, I am going to win one for dad.
Yeah,
I'm going to break
thought that was
through
awesome.
and do that. That was awesome. That was awesome to hear.
It truly was. And my final thought on this is Jerry does need to say what he said. Like, hey, guys, trust me. Like, I know what I'm doing, and I'm taking a risk, and I think this is an awesome risk to take because I'm betting on the person, and this is a great person. Say that. It just didn't need to be 12 minutes. He was asked, why are you hiring Brian Schottenheimer? And he said, I don't want to make this about myself, but, and then went on for about 10 minutes and said, I always wanted to be a coach, but I wanted to drive a bigger car and own my own airplane. If I knew now what I had to pay coaches, I would have been a coach. And you're like, oh boy. And then he just kept going and going and going and going. You're like, all right, I get the point. Let's talk about the guy sitting next to you. And they eventually did. And Shotty had his moment, and I hope it goes well. Quick final thought here on Mobile. Everyone wants to know about the quarterbacks. Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, does a great job putting this together. And not only putting it together, but the other part of the job is keeping the players here because agents tell them go home after having a good day of practice or having 2 good days of practice. Jim made waves on Monday when he said, hey, none of the quarterbacks in this year's class, not none of the ones here, but none of the quarterbacks in this year's class would have been top 6 last year. That got headlines. All it takes is one, though, to bust through and be really good, right? And then, obviously, the narrative, you don't know the narrative now, or you can't really get the results. It takes years to truly grade a quarterback class. The 2 quarterbacks of most note here in Mobile are Jalen Milrose, who won the Campbell Award, the academic Heisman. Let me tell you, heard him on the podium yesterday, spoke to him a little bit, just me and him after practice today. Blown away by the guy. Like, you want to talk about not only A-plus citizen, A-plus young man, like, want that guy in my building. I want Jalen Milroe in my building. Now, do I want him as my starting quarterback? That's another question, and those questions have to be answered, and it won't only be here, but people want to see the accuracy. There were some balls today that you're like, ooh, boy, right? He also, threw a couple laser beams as well. And that is the part of his game that he has to refine. But you talk to Tommy Rees, the Browns offensive coordinator, he'll tell you his 2023 season with Jalen Milroe, the way Alabama developed from how that offense started and how that offense finished is a very proud moment in coaching. And Milroe also spoke of that yesterday. The guy can play. Do I think he's a top 5 pick? No, I don't. Is Jalen Milroe going to go somewhere and have the opportunity to prove everybody wrong? Absolutely. He has all the physical skills and all the intangibles. Just it's the quarterback play that you need to see more of. Jackson Dart had a little trouble today with the ball, a couple of fumbles when he had to be under center. That's not all his fault. None of these quarterbacks work from under center. Most of them don't, however. That is during their college careers. He worked with a bunch of different centers today. Some of them, as he pointed out, weren't even really centers. They were just moving people through. That'll get cleaned up. It's not what you do day 1 of the Senior Bowl. It's what you do by the end of practices on Thursday, how you take the coaching. Really, a lot today was install and how you take it to Thursday. Jackson Dart can play a little bit. The question is, he's got some accuracy. The windows in Lane Kiffin's offense are this wide, right? How does that translate to the NFL when the windows are this wide? And that's what you got to figure out. And the third quarterback today that is interesting. Riley Leonard. Look, I know he looked like a right-handed Tim Tebow, but he's a big kid. He admitted he's pretty beat up, but he wants to be here. He played a 16-game season. Again, there are some accuracy issues, but he's interesting. He's a big kid. The opposite, Sam, is Dylan Gabriel's like listed at 6 feet at Oregon. I did an Oregon game this year, met with him in Eugene before the game. He's not 6 feet. You thought he'd be 5'11". He came in at like 5'10 and a half when they weighed everyone in at the Senior Bowl. That's tiny. I mean, standing next to some of these O-linemen, he looked tiny out there today, but he can throw the football. Like He had amazing RPMs on it, like the GPS trackers. He threw the hardest pass, the fastest pass today. Do you care about that? The ball came out the fastest today on one rotation from Dillon Gabriel, not from any of the other guys. I was standing with one head coach at one point today, and Dillon Gabriel whipped a pass, and that head coach looks at me, he's like, "That was a nice ball." Like, he can play. He's 5'10" and a half. However, and that is a legitimate issue. I know you're not here. I know you're not throwing quarterback opinions down, watching on NFL Network all day long, but like, those are the names to follow. But there obviously is a lot of first-round talent here, especially on the D line, and those are the names that'll get the headlines as the week progresses.
You just mentioned quarterback, and it is so fascinating. Quarterback, the hardest job outside of being on the field is projecting a quarterback from this level to the next level. It is so impossible. And I go back to the Baker Mayfield draft. I always love looking at that one because of the names. When you look at Baker, Darnold, Rosen, Allen, Lamar Jackson, and you go back, and at that time, the consensus, we all thought we were having a conversation about whether or not, first of all, in LA, it was Darnold or Rosen, and then, of course, Baker in there. And it turns out that the two guys vying for the MVP this season are, of course, taken after those first three. It's so difficult.
Sure.
What is getting it right at that position? And then, of course, Brady, Montana being what they are in the draft, later in the draft, what do you get? It can be so difficult. And last year, you got a quarterback that is the final pick in the draft in the Super Bowl with the 49ers in Brock Purdy. It is so difficult to predict. And there used to, think about this. It used to be the quarterbacks from Alabama couldn't win in the league. And then that was all changed, right? And then you had Tua and Mac and Jalen all playing well for a while.
Well, Mac was a hot 5 minutes.
But what I'm saying is there was that season where you could see, oh, wow, all three of these guys were together in the same quarterback room in Alabama. Now they're all starting in the league. Look, they all went to the playoffs, right? Technically, Mac, Tua, and Jalen all took a team to the playoffs. That we can certainly say that definitively. It's just funny. Sometimes it's, wow, you need the guy from Wyoming. And then sometimes, oh, no, you need the guy with the pedigree, C.J. Stroud from an Ohio State. It's just, there is no science to it. And it's why what you're doing at the Senior Bowl, and then, of course, what happens at the Combine, there is just something to it. And when you hear Belichick talk about, or Parcells even, remember Parcells? He used to measure knees and legs for offensive linemen. There's just such a science to it. And yet, in the end, it really just feels impossible.
No, and measuring, is part of it. Like, what is Dillon Gabriel's actual height? Like, you get media guide heights and you get school heights and weights. But then you have what is it actually? And that's always a huge part of the draft process. And sometimes you get stunned. Like Deion Walker, the defensive tackle, defensive tackle for Kentucky, was listed at 6'6" and 345 by Kentucky. 6'6", 345. Okay. He checked in at 6'7", 345. Like, he's actually taller than Kentucky listed him. He's that big. And then hand size is a big deal. Jalen Milrose has little tiny hands. He doesn't, but that's going to be the draft run-up. He checked in like 8.5 hands, 8 3/4. So here comes you can't play quarterback in the NFL with hands that are under 9 inches. I guarantee you, though, and I had this conversation with the GM today, they said, by the time he gets to Indy, I bet you he has 9-inch hands, because you can stretch out your hand, right? That's a thing. Some hands are measured differently. Some guys, sometimes the guy in Indy measures it differently than the guy here. But that is now a thing. I shook Jalen Milrose's hand. He has a firm handshake. I can confirm. Nice guy. All right, so that's going to do it from here. And, thanks for, dealing with my spacious, beautiful, luxurious hotel. And, Sam, Mobile misses you. You got to come to Mobile one of these days.
I will join you one day. Look, from the backdrop, I can tell it's spectacular. Did you get your meal? I believe you talked about what it's like to travel there and get your Mobile meal every time in the same way.
No, but I do have to go because dinner is in 20 minutes. And I got to hop in the shower. But I have not had a good meal yet in Mobile. I promise that good meal will be reported upon on the very next edition of Thinking Out Loud. So long.